2:14 a.m. Indian Ocean. The USS Shadow, a Virginia-class attack submarine, drifted like a ghost at 400 feet below the surface, moving at just 4 knots. 7,800 tons of steel wrapped around silence, powered by an S-9G reactor and a pump jet drive that whispered instead of churned. The boat was a shadow inside the ocean's veins, unseen, unheard, waiting. Then it came. A faint knock, soft, metallic, out of place, slipped through the deep. The sonar operator stiffened as if touched on the shoulder by something unseen. Contact, low frequency, bearing 039. The control room held its breath. This was no merchant heartbeat. Cargo ships in this lane carried slow, honest rhythms, broad, steady pulses you could set a watch to. This was different. Off-pattern, lurking. The towed array stretched behind like a tail of nerves able to catch diesel screws from 8 to 12 nautical miles away. And tonight, it had found something that didn't belong. On the waterfall display, the trace flickered in and out like an eye blinking in the dark. The computer hesitated, tasting the sound, then offered nothing certain. It was as if the ocean itself wanted to keep a secret. The XO bent over the plot. Classification. The sonar tech twisted knobs, narrowing the noise. Not commercial, could be a freighter. One that's been taught how to bite. Captain Daniel Reaves stood behind them, silent arms folded the weight of command, pressing as heavy as the sea above. He didn't need to speak yet. Every man in the room knew the meaning of that faint vibration in the headphones. One stray sound out of place in the night had just turned a routine patrol into the opening move of something far larger. That single echo began to harden. Line by line, the trace turned into the outline of something wrong, something built to hunt. Intelligence overlays filled in the blanks: a 160-meter hull, roughly 22 meters on the beam, a merchant profile stretched and carved to hide a weapons trunk. Acoustic signature was dirty for a civilian diesel plant with broadband noise in the 50-60 hertz band, suggesting older main engines and auxiliary gensets. Estimated displacement on the order of 15,000, 25,000 tons, heavy enough to swallow small escorts and carry a lethal load. Her stern gate was a garage for violence. 12 explosive USVs sat in the sketches, speed 20-35 knots endurance and comms to reach roughly 40-50 nautical miles, warhead estimates in the 200-300 kilogauss TNT equivalent class, small vessels capable of turning a light escort or a container ship's side into slag. Radar cross-section for these USVs under 1 millimeter. In sea clutter, they look like gulls on a scope. Deck crews launched small UAVs, commercial EO/IR airframes, 2 to 3 hour endurance, operating at 2,000-5,000 FT to mark and laser designate targets. Sharp words, improvised rails, and reinforced deck houses hinted at 2 anti-ship missiles jury-rigged into place Harpoon variants or NSM-type systems. Harpoon Block 2 gives roughly 120-130 kilometer reach with a 220 kilometer warhead. NSM pushes to 185 km with a sea-skimming seeker and a 125 kW warhead. That means this freighter could threaten traffic lanes far beyond visual range. If Shadow moved like a ghost through the deep, this ship wore appetite-like armor, a cheap merchant hull dressed as an aircraft carrier. Then a crackle on secure comms, a Singapore-flagged container reported an unidentified radar contact at bearing 039, matching Shadow's plot. Civilian lives and high-value cargo threaded into the same needle. Command voice was crisp: observe, record relay. Hold fire unless there is no other choice. Orders hung like iron, clear, cold binding. Orders to hold fire weighed heavy, but Shadow kept moving, a ghost threading deeper into the dark. At 4 knots, the hull barely murmured, the reactor's rhythm steady as a soldier's heartbeat under steel ribs. Numbers trickled in, each one colder than the last. Contact range 8.6 nautical miles. Target speed 12 knots. Heading 214. Bearings remained steady, painting not coincidence but intent. Inside Combat Information Center, the world shrank to red light and the glow of screens. Panels pulsed sterile green outlines, crisp and merciless. The watchstanders leaned close ears tethered to the sea while keyboards clicked like nervous teeth. Shadows clung to every corner, but the data burned bright lines, vectors, echoes. The computer whispered in its metallic dialect, carving digits into the plot. Each report sounded like a knuckle rapping at the door of fate, insistent and unforgiving. Bearings locked without drift. course steady. Whoever commanded that ship was not passing through. They were hunting their own shadow. The XO kept his voice clipped steady, but tensions seeped into the air carried in every shallow breath. Contact maintaining bearing, shadowing us. No one disagreed. The ocean itself confirmed it, unchanging geometry, relentless, patient. Steel beneath the crew seemed to tighten, as if the submarine sensed the danger and coiled its muscles for the strike it might be forced to deliver. In the stillness, every detail screamed louder, reactor hums, sonar pings, the red digits counting down positions. Routine patrol had ended. The predator on the surface had chosen its prey, and the shadow moved through the deep, knowing this was no accident of traffic, but the deliberate weight of another will pressing in from above. Or 2:42 a.m. Above the black horizon, the pirate mothership shifted her weight, hydraulics groaning as a stern gate yawned open. From her belly poured Predator's 8 unmanned surface vessels, each kicking up white scars on the sea at 30 knots. To sonar, they were chaos. To the eye, they were sharks with engines eager for blood. The first to break clear slammed straight into a small RHIB escort that had been shadowing nearby lanes. A blossom of fire ripped upward, tearing night apart. Flame reflected off waves, a brief lighthouse of destruction, then was gone, leaving smoke and twisted wreckage. Numbers began to tell the story. Each USV carried an estimated 200 to 300 kilograms of high explosive, the sort of charge that could gut a destroyer's hull or rip a supertanker open like a tin can. At 25 to 35 knots, they would close distance in minutes. Radar cross-section less than 1 square meter made them almost invisible against sea clutter. To sensors, they were ghosts with teeth. The sonar operator's voice cracked through the headsets. Multiple high-speed screws, closing fast. His knuckles were white against the console. The XO leaned over the chart, jaw locked. If they hit that LNG tanker, $200 million becomes fireworks. And that's the cheap cost. A new alarm cut through the distress tone of a civilian broadcast. A fishing trawler caught in the lane had mistaken one USV's trajectory. The drone's bow angled directly at the small vessel engines roaring. A mayday call bled over comms, the voice of a frightened civilian captain filling the room. The battle zone widened in a single heartbeat, no longer warship against pirate, but civilians dragged into the line of fire. One wrong move now, and the ocean itself would become the kill zone. 02:55 a.m. swarm ETA to the LNG tanker, 11 minutes. Choices stacked like ordnance on a table. Option 1, non-kinetic patience, wait for an EA-18G Growler to reach orbit and blanket the area with ECM and communications jamming ETA, 40 minutes. Break their links, scramble their guidance, spoof their nav. Soft power that buys time but arrives too late for an imminently threatened civilian ship. Option 2, kinetic immediacy, a single MK-48 AD cap from Shadow's tube. Numbers do the talking. MK-48 Mod 7, 533, mm diameter, 650 kilo warhead, sprinting above 50 knots, effective run measured in tens of kilometers, 38 km 21 NMEI in this firing solution. One torpedo running acoustic homing will find engineering spaces and deliver catastrophic keel damage in under 2 minutes once in water. Precision is real. Collateral risk is realer. CIC is a cathedral of instruments. Data feeds blink bearing steady closure rate climbing. Civilian radar corroborates. Sonar tracks paint a straight line toward the tanker. The crew swaps looks that are less questions than calculations. If we shoot, the XO says voice even, we stop the swarm. If we wait, tanker's structure becomes an ignition source. Captain Daniel Reaves moves like a surgeon in a clean room. Calm hands, colder calculus. In his head, the options are scalpel or sledge. The fire control switch gleams under the light, a small lever that carries the mass of consequence. It felt in that moment heavier than the submarine's hull. Restraint and annihilation balanced on a fraction of a breath. Reaves chose deception. 2 Nixie-style acoustic decoys slipped free into the water tethers, paid out like lifelines. They broadcasted engineered engine growls, low-frequency signatures tuned to mimic diesel and auxiliary rumble across the 50-120 Hz band. The idea was surgical, pretend to be a freight engine draw. The swarm's attention break their cohesion. Within 60 seconds, the tactic worked in part. Several USVs altered course, converging on the false engine signatures. A handful collided at speed or detonated against one another when their proximity-fused triggers misread wakes. Explosions stuttered along the surface like a string of bad fireworks. Sensors logged the kills, 3 USVs neutralized in under 3 minutes, their warheads consuming themselves against foam. The room exhaled, but the relief was brittle. Not all the swarm played the script. One larger USV, hardened and programmed for mission priority, ignored the bait. Locked on the LNG tanker, she ran at 32 knots, closing with 4 minutes 15 seconds to impact. Closure rates and bearing confirmed a direct intercept course. Time compressed into digits on the plot. Then the second twist overhead this time. A pirate UAV dove from altitude in a kamikaze arc terminal, speed roughly 100 knots, zeroing on a merchant radar mast. Its guidance vector painted a second simultaneous threat on the operator screens. 2 distinct timers ticked on 2 different axes. The ocean reorganized itself into a lethal chessboard. Pawns moved like missiles. Every square might be detonation. Shadow's crew watched live geometry intersect with human lives. Command had bought seconds with deception, but deception had not solved the calculus. Someone must act. The choice narrowed to who lives, who burns. Or 3:06 a.m. Captain Daniel Reaves snapped the silence. Fire one tube. A lever moved metal side and the world narrowed to a single brass mouth. The Mk-48 slid from its tube not as a tool but as a will-cold, deliberate predatory. In the hydrophones, it registered like a heartbeat that belonged to steel, run-out speed 55 knots, an active passive acoustic seeker cycling through sound like a hound sampling wind. Time to target in this firing solution under 90 seconds. Console lights counted down, pings tightened. The torpedo rode a quiet pressure wave, hunting the acoustic signature of the mothership's engine room, homing where noise promised flesh. Crew voices dropped to one-syllable commands. Sensors painted a single vector bearing lock intercept course. The fire control solution was surgical aim for stern engineering, disrupt propulsion, and power deny the enemy its brain. Impact was not cinematic fireworks for its own sake, it was a physics event. Steel folded where rivets held compartments, flooded as bulkheads split. The stern ruptured. A column of water punched skyward, 40 meters of white, then black, and the mothership's wake churned like a wounded animal. On the plot, power traces died, generators offline, comms flickered, guidance links failed. The USV network lost its puppeteer in an instant. For a breath, the crew watched ash and spray answer their decision. The Mk-48 had not swum. It had hunted and struck true. Consequence arrived in measured physics hull breach, flooding rates, climbing mission kill achieved. No celebration, only the cold clinical accounting of damage reports and the knowledge that the next moves would be as consequential as the one just made. Shockwaves from the mothership's death rippled across the surface and through the data link. Screens in Shadow's CIC painted sudden chaos, guidance feeds cut, encrypted pulses vanished. The swarm lost its leash. USVs that had sprinted with precision now veered erratic, some colliding bow to bow, others detonating prematurely as their fuses misread wakes. Water spouted with jagged eruptions like depth charges in reverse as their warheads consumed themselves in the confusion. Above, UAVs faltered. With command uplinks gone, their circuits wandered blind. One by one, they spiraled downward, powerless arcs of metal and propeller birds with clipped wings falling into the sea. Debris punched foam into the waves. In the chaos, the LNG tanker loomed intact, her hull untouched, still pushing east at 16 knots. For a heartbeat, the crew felt reprieve. But reprieve was short-lived. A rogue drone divorced from the swarm, yet still hunting noise broke from the melee. Its bow angled toward Shadow. Radar warning alarms cut through CIC with shrill urgency. Sonar pings overlapped, frantic proximity collapsing. Closure rates spiked. Reaves did not hesitate. Emergency dive plus 50 meters, 30 seconds. Ballast tanks roared as steel groaned under pressure. Depth indicators spun down. Crew braced hands, gripping rails, jaws locked. Above, the drone slammed into the surface layer where Shadow had been. A detonation thundered, water column lashing upward, spray raining back in torrents. The submarine felt the concussion as a low thump close enough to register in bones. Death had clawed at the hull and missed by meters. 90 seconds after the torpedo strike, the tactical picture steadied. Remaining USVs listed or drifted dead. The swarm was gone, neutralized, not by celebration, but by mathematics of chaos and pressure. 03:15 a.m. marked the shift from combat to consequence. Blackwater still rolled with oil slicks and debris, but rescue craft cut through the wreckage nets trailing. 42 pirates were pulled from the waves, coughing brine, their makeshift empire reduced to survivors clinging to shattered planks. Numbers told the cold ledger. Engagement duration: 61 minutes from first sonar ping to final detonation. Civilian casualties 0. Pirate mothership mission: kill total, loss her hull, bleeding air and fuel until she slid beneath. For Shadow's crew, the tactical picture closed with mathematics that favored order over chaos. A communique drafted in measured prose left the boat within the hour, mission achieved. Civilians protected, threat eliminated. Yet steel and silence could not dictate the story alone. By dawn, regional channels framed headlines differently: U.S. submarine sinks merchant vessel. Screens glowed with footage of smoke and splintered hulls. Context dissolved into accusation. Allies defended with precision, citing intercepted comms and recovered warheads. Rivals accused escalation, painting the strike as proof of unchecked American aggression. Diplomats wrestled while analysts dissected sonar data frame by frame, seeking proof in echoes. Irony clung to the map like a watermark. On pirate charts, a red dot had vanished, forever erased by physics and pressure. On the diplomatic board, however, another arrow pointed squarely at Washington, a new vector in an old game. What began as a single echo under steel now resonated far beyond the sea, its ripples stretching into headlines, boardrooms, and briefings. The crew of Shadow logged their report, knowing the fight had ended here, but the narrative had only begun. From the wreckage of steel and politics rose a quieter truth. Swarm drones had proven themselves chaos incarnate, cheap teeth, gnawing at the arteries of order. They were crude but effective small warheads lashed to engines, disposable fangs meant to overwhelm by numbers rather than skill. They turned sea lanes into minefields that moved threats multiplied by desperation rather than design. Yet beneath that chaos, the calm discipline of a nuclear-powered submarine had held. Shadow was proof that patience, training, and ingenuity outweighed raw aggression. Every valve that held under pressure, every sonar ping interpreted correctly, every decision timed against a clock of minutes and seconds, each was a reminder that in war, mastery of detail can be more decisive than volume of fire. The captain's silence had been as heavy as his command. His crew acted not in panic, but with precision, turning machinery into extensions of will. Deception through decoys, strike through torpedo, evasion through dive, all choreographed like a surgeon's hand under duress. The pirates had wielded noise, the Navy answered with calculation. History will write arguments, politicians will frame headlines, rivals will sharpen accusations. But under the ocean, where sound is truth and silence is survival, the balance is simpler. Ingenuity is the great equalizer. It transforms machines into hunters' decisions, into survival restraint, into victory. As Shadow returned to her patrol depth, the sea itself seemed to exhale. Waves closed over oil and debris surface, smoothing to black glass. In the deep, the towed array hummed again, listening, searching. Sonar pulses echoed through the hull like a living heartbeat, ping, ping, ping. A reminder that vigilance never ends, and that the next echo could be the start of another war.